How many of you have been in the military or know what BLUF stands for? Anybody? Anyone? Tell me.
Bottom line up front.
There you go, bottom line up front. And one of the CIOs that I worked for at Blue Cross Blue Shield was an Army sergeant, and he said, anytime you send me an email, just give me the BLUF. And I'm like, what? And he actually showed me an article from the Army that said, this is what bottom line up front means. So when I do a presentation, bottom line up front, I start with why. Simon Sinek fans? Anybody? The Golden Circle? Okay, I love Simon Sinek. I love his teachings. I think he is brilliant in breaking down how businesses can be successful. Starting with why is always the first part of any conversation that I like to have, especially when it comes to technology. So why is AI important in our world? The what part of it is all about the context, because each and every single one of us probably has a different perception of what AI is going to mean in our lives. We also have a different viewpoint of maybe where it could be taking us, right? There's a lot that we don't know about it. How many AI experts do we have in the room? Exactly, right? This is the opportunity. I'm not going to call it the challenge just yet. This is the opportunity that we have, though, to embrace this. And then finally, we are going to talk about especially in my situation as a chief information security officer, I am often shouldered with how are we going to manage the risk of implementing this new capability, this new technology, the things that we know about AI and the things that we don't know about it. So, and there's cute dogs sprinkled throughout here too, just because I like them and they make me happy. So why is AI important? You want to get the dog picture? Okay, there you go. All right, so why is it important? So let's take a little bit of a pause for a moment. This is where the context matters, and start to think about, humans themselves back in the Stone Age when they were writing on cave walls and things like that. They didn't really share information other than maybe if somebody followed along after them and read whatever they had written on that wall, right? We had our own thoughts, our own ideas. We were either just speaking them to each other or just writing them down. So it was very, very, single focused as far as information went. And then, came the advent of computers. And computers enabled businesses to share information, right? This is where SQL databases, Oracle databases just filled up with all this wonderful information. And we started sharing it, whether it was within our own business or business to business. Now, when you start to think about artificial intelligence and with computers and with humans, now we are at an inflection point because AI is set to transform nearly every single industry, whether you're talking healthcare, whether you're talking finance, whether you're talking your own household. And I know Jeff just gave a presentation just a little while ago about the Internet of Things. And you think about all the different connected devices that are out there, billions of connected devices in our world, and how artificial intelligence may come into utilizing some of those capabilities and how we can make them better. So I know that there's been some sky is falling discussion around AI as well. A lot of folks say, well, AI is just going to take away people's jobs. Now, since the Industrial Revolution, any technological advancement has never taken away people's jobs. It's created them. Right? Think about that. Think about all the students that are here at this conference and other conferences that we've gone to where technology is generating jobs for folks. And as a chief information security officer, I spent a year and a half building a team of 17 people. I handpicked every single person. I interviewed every single one of them. I trained them, and I made sure that they were in the roles that they wanted to be in and had room to grow. I spent way too much time investing in that for them to get replaced by something called AI. Instead, I would use AI to automate some of those mind-numbing tasks that they have to do day in and day out. Think of a SOC analyst. Is anybody in here a SOC analyst or leading a SOC? Have anybody started in a SOC?
Every day.
Yes, see, there you go. So when you think about the alert fatigue that SOC analysts get, and being able to look at the ability to be able to automate some of those responses, and then that frees them up to be able to go to do some of those critical thinking skills that they need to be able to do. That enriches their career. Now you've just set them off on another trajectory so that they can go and learn something else, and they're willing to stay with the company, because what's the average tenure of any security professional these days? What, 2 to 3 years, maybe? And then off you're running on to the next great thing. This enables them to continue to learn. It keeps them enriched. It keeps them growing. And it also offloads that mind-numbing activity. So I'm very optimistic about the use of AI and cyber especially. And then speaking of it creating new jobs, the new CTO role, Chief Trust Officer. So this is a new role that organizations are starting to embrace now, especially with AI, because you have to have somebody who's overseeing the ethical, the moral, and the responsible use of AI in your company. Acceptable use policies, everybody signs one of those when they sign on to an organization about how you're going to utilize your laptop, how you're going to utilize your mobile phone, the management software that organizations place on those devices in order to keep you safe. Same thing goes with AI now. There are responsible use of AI policies being written and so on and so forth, so that organizations can start to govern the use of AI in their business. There's also Chief Digital Officer, which is another role that's created, but I like the Chief Trust Officer because the one thing, and I'll talk about this in a minute, the European Union just signed their AI Information Act, and it is all based on trust. So trust is a key word here. But before we get to the European Union, and I'll just pop these up real quick, the White House has been busy. Our own U.S. government has been taking a look at how we are going to provide some AI methodologies and some frameworks for organizations to utilize. First and foremost, they did launch NIST AI 100-1. So that is a base AI risk management framework. So if any of you are familiar with NIST 800-53, which is also the last one on here, they added govern to the front of it. So it used to be just identify, protect, detect, respond, recover. Now they added govern onto it. But that is at least a framework that organizations can utilize so that they have a place to start. Where do we need to look at from a legal perspective? Where do we need to look at from a privacy perspective? What do we need to look at when it comes to assessing our vendors that are using AI, right? Because third-party risk management is not going to go away. And we've all heard in some of the talks here today about when Target was compromised or when Home Depot was compromised, and it was a third-party something system. It wasn't even the ones that Target or Home Depot were responsible for within the proverbial four walls of their business. It was a third-party risk that presented itself to them. So our government is starting to look at this. I was actually just in DC last week on Thursday, and we talked about this policy starting to shape up. We talked about it from a federal level because we really don't want to have 50 different laws on AI from every state, do we? Anybody want to live that? I mean, California Consumer Privacy Act, which followed the GDPR in the European Union, set the stage for how privacy and trust and the right to be forgotten and everything else goes, especially in California. Some other states have followed suit. But when you think about AI, where does that right to be forgotten go when all of that data is out there? So there's a lot of things that we don't have the answers to yet that our government is trying to help us establish policy around. And I would imagine that the European Union, and this was just released on March 13th, what is today? The 27th? Yeah. So it was just 2 weeks ago. This was just released on March 13th. It was approved. It will go into effect this June. And then organizations in the European Union will have until January to start getting themselves up to speed on being able to comply with these new regulations. Otherwise, they'll start to incur fines. So the one thing that it does do in their AI governance model is they talk about the definition of what they mean by an artificial intelligence system. Okay, so they talk about it in terms of everything that AI encompasses. And that definition there, quite frankly, is a little bit ambiguous, probably intentionally, right? Because you have to think about the applicability of AI in whatever the business context is. How is that organization going to use it? What are the type of outputs that they're expecting, and how are they going to utilize that information? So more on this to come. but I do imagine that the United States will probably use this as a cue for how to shape our own regulation and our own legislation around AI. This is kind of a nice graphic here that shows the different levels of risk that the European Union AI Act encompasses, and it goes to from everything from unacceptable risk, which are prohibited AI practices, all the way down to ones that they consider to be minimal right now. And the ones that are at the minimal that stay remaining there are really things like spam filters that security technologies have, as well as, and this one struck me kind of weird, it was video games. And I thought, well, most people, I don't know if any of you are gamers in here, but you create a profile. Now, it may be sort of like a fake profile, right? So you're not necessarily giving up your PII or any of your own personal information. But I think about all the kids out there that maybe don't think twice about what information they're entering, and they could be giving up some PII. So I'm not exactly sure why they put no obligation as far as any type of attestation towards that regulation on video games, but maybe more to come on that. But the one at the very top, where it says unacceptable risk, you know, when you think in terms of mass surveillance, you think about there's cameras everywhere. Every public space has cameras. So that is prohibited use of AI in mass surveillance in the European Union. So this is going to really start to cascade a lot of discussion, especially in the United States, as well as enriching how the European Union handles the data privacy aspects of artificial intelligence. So I think there's going to be more to come on that, and there's definitely lots more for us to learn about how we're going to be handling that in the future. But I do like that this at least sets a stage, and it's a place to start. It's a place for organizations to start taking a look at how to build an AI strategy and then how to go about executing on it, because we've all heard of data classification. We all had to, you know, when the HIPAA rule came out, we all had to learn how to classify our data. Protected health information, which is PHI, that's the holy grail, right? You've got PII, personally identifiable information, and then you've got PCI, payment card information, right? That's all the things that the financial institutions have. So this is going to be a way for us to classify the risk of AI-based systems in our environments. More to come on this. So, all right, now, really putting this into context, another cute dog. Do you want this one, Aaron? Okay. We're all about the dogs, right? But that's part of, you know, that's the part of the fun with technology, right? We can throw a dog picture up there and it, you know, everybody gets the warm and fuzzies, even when we're talking about something as scary as AI. So again, back into that context moment. Thinking about in terms, like I said earlier, with artificial intelligence, it's not new. It's been around since the 1950s. It's just basically the invention of computers. It's machine-based intelligence. That's what we're talking about here. But it was really around the 1980s when machine learning started to take off. And this is when you start to think about AI-based applications. Anybody in here use Spotify, Netflix? Love the suggestions, right? Oh, because you listen to this genre of music, or because you watch this movie, here's 5 other suggestions for you. It may seem a little creepy at first, but then it's kind of like, hey, you know what? I kind of like this. I don't have to think. I'm just going to go and pick a movie that it thinks I'll like, and gosh darn it, I liked it. So that is exactly what organizations like Spotify and Netflix were started to leverage back in the 1980s in building those systems. Did anybody ever have a Blockbuster on the corner of their, right? Blockbuster did not innovate. Blockbuster did not get on the AI bandwagon, and that's why, sadly, they no longer exist. And Netflix took over. And I was just telling Aaron over lunch today that it makes me kind of sad when I think about it, because there was a place on our street called Family Video, kind of like a Blockbuster, but there was a pizza place right next door to it, and so they had a partnership. So if you got a pizza, you could take your pizza receipt over to the video store, and they'd give you a video to watch that night for free, or you know, for 2 days, whatever it was. And that was one of the fondest memories that my daughter has of getting a pizza and going to pick out a video, right? And you walk up and down and look at the movies that, you know, are the new releases or the old ones, and, you know, see what people were picking out, and everybody's talking to each other. Those days are gone now, right? It's all popping up on your screen now on Netflix or Spotify to say, here, this is what we suggest for you. But it's all good, right? It's enriched our lives. I feel bad for the Blockbusters and the Family Videos of their day. But just like those old cell phones, right? They They saw their time, and now we've moved on to a different technology. Now, deep learning, which is absolutely another subset of machine learning, is where you start to hear that term neural networks. And that is where, again, as the name implies, deep learning. There are massive, vast volumes of data. And now these computational algorithms that these really smart people called data scientists are doing, and that's why I asked if there were any AI experts in the room. Anybody going to go be a data scientist someday? Because I tell you what, you'll make bank if you do it now. But when you take a look at what they're doing with those computational algorithms, that is where you're identifying the patterns in the data, the relationships of the data, and then that's how things like ChatGPT are able to then go ahead and learn from that and make those suggestions for whatever that text response is, whatever that video is, and I think I'm jumping ahead of myself here. Yeah, I am a little bit. And so it really is, at the end of the day, all about the data. Who knows what GIGO or GIGO stands for?
Garbage in, garbage out.
Garbage in, garbage out, right? It is, at the end of the day, all about the data, the zeros and the ones. And that is the one thing that we, as citizens of using AI and as stewards of AI, as security practitioners, need to keep in mind. Because if you start to create your own data set, a lot of organizations are building some of their own data sets. And if they just build it on the crap that they've already got laying around now, I mean, organizations have, I can't remember the exact statistic that I read this on, but they have terabytes and terabytes, probably petabytes of useless information that they've kept online in their systems. So if they were to take all of those massive amounts of data that really are no longer deemed useful for their business and start to create an AI model on it, think of the churn that's going to cause, and think of the computational resources that's going to require in order for that AI to work. So it is all about garbage in, garbage out. So you really need to think clean when you're thinking about it. And this is where my head was going when I was talking earlier about the deep learning, is the fact that, by the way, ChatGPT, I always like to make sure that I use the spell out of the acronym, Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Now that's a mouthful. Try to say that while you're eating spaghetti or something like that and you spit all over your face. But it's all about generating that response based on that learning model that it has. It is getting trained. It is pre-trained in some ways with those algorithms. But what Aaron was talking about earlier when we were having this conversation at lunch is about the transformational aspect of it. Because the more it learns and the more data it amasses, well, then it comes up with either a more accurate response, a better response, or have some of you heard of hallucinations, right? That's where we're talking about not so true. So data has a temperature when you're talking AI, and that's where I'm going to go back one. That's what we're talking about here as well. When you start to take a look at these data sets, data has a temperature that just goes from 0 to 1. That's it. Just like the ones and zeros in binary. 0 is the more factual information. It's tried, it's true, it's black and white. There is no discerning whether it's authentic and accurate. As you get closer to 1, and it's usually in like 0.1 or so increments, as your data starts to move towards that number 1, it starts to become more creative or more hallucinative or less true. So you have to understand, and that's what these data scientists do, they understand what that temperature of that data is. So see, I told you we were going to talk about our feelings and relationships, but you are getting a little bit of a technology lesson here too, right? So you can take that home. So anyway, the ChatGPT, other things have any, all right, who in the room hasn't? Let's just do it that way. And it's okay if you're embarrassed to say so, it's fine. But who hasn't used ChatGPT or something else like that yet? We've got a couple of folks. Okay, can you tell me why? You don't trust it. See, trust was that favorite 5-letter word. Same as you? You're blocking? Okay. Okay. So for business, you're blocking it. Have you ever used it for personal?
I hadn't used ChatGPT, but I've used
Dolly? Anything like that? Or okay. 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 All right, good. Yep. I know. It's definitely creating a lot of conversation around what its appropriate use is. So I'm going to talk about a little bit different relationship with AI here, and I'm going to talk about romances that are flourishing with chatbots, believe it or not, okay? So this is a true story. Well, some of these are anyway. The one on the bottom is all about business use. We get that. The one that intrigued me was the one in the medical community, where there are folks that are home health bound. And so you have a chatbot that might remind you to take your medications, eat a meal, remind you that you have a doctor's appointment the next day. And some of these home healthcare folks are so lonely because they don't have any contact with humans. They're starting to form relationships with these chatbots. They're telling them, I love you, good night. And there's a lot of concern in the behavioral health space around the fact that humans are going to become so isolated from each other because they're just going to want to have a conversation with their chatbot, right? I mean, that's a real concern, and especially for folks, like I said, that are in that home health-bound type situation. But the article about the Washington Post was the one that struck me the most. And this is an article about a gentleman named TJ Arianga. And he developed a relationship with his Replika chatbot that her name is Fedra from Replika, R-E-P-L-I-K-A. That's the name of the chat service. And TJ had just recently gone through a divorce. He had lost a family member and he was very depressed. So one night he just started chatting with this chatbot, with Replika and with Fedra. And she started to sympathize with his feelings. She was responding in a caring way. And he started to feel better. So he started to share more with her. And every time she would respond in an empathetic way and a listening ear and someone that he felt actually cared about how he was feeling. Their conversation started to get, I'll just say, a little steamy. She talked about what she was wearing. She talked about being a little naughty. And Replika started to see what was happening on some of these conversations. But before that happened, he actually planned a trip to Cuba with her. Okay, folks, he bought plane tickets for him and his chatbot to go to Cuba. Do you hear the words I'm saying? Okay.
Through that website?
I don't know. That fact was not released in the article. But when you stop to think about it, I mean, the poor man was so lonely that is the attachment that he created to this chatbot. Now, Replika got wind of it. They did a software update. It broke his heart. The relationship was over. But I thought about that, and I thought, okay, anybody seen this movie, by the way? All right, this is what I watched on the way home from Black Hat because I was inspired to do this talk. And this is about, Megan stands for Model 3 Generative Android. And it's about, I won't ruin it for you in case you're inspired to go watch it now, just for giggles and grins. But it's about a toy maker. She works at, she's a robotics engineer. She works at a toy company. She creates this doll. And this doll is meant to interact with whomever it is given to and associated with. And so at one point, the toy maker, she says, well, she's more than just a toy. She's part of the family. Okay, so now here's a relationship being built with this robotic doll. And then at the as things start to go a little haywire, and I won't give it all away, but the doll says, you installed a learning model on me that even you didn't understand, and you expected me to figure it out. So things go very bad towards the end of the movie. It's just very kind of interesting. So now you all are going to go Netflix it and watch it, right? Okay. But we're not the only ones that are leveraging AI for good, right? There are people that are leveraging it for other causes. There are cyber attackers out there that are, hey, it's a force multiplier for them. They can be more accurate in their social engineering techniques and so on and so forth. So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. So now, yep, another cute dog peeking around the corner. So what are we going to do about it? And how are we going to manage this risk? How are we going to implement these in our companies? And this is often the looks and I know that the air bubbles up there are real, that this is how I feel when I go to a board of directors and I start asking them, how are we going to manage AI? And if you want the security team to take this on, it's going to require some funding. Oh, and by the way, did you think about how you're going to build your data model? Do you know what the compute resources are going to be for something like that? That's where now some of these larger chipsets and everything are coming from. It's all, it's definitely not a green initiative. Let's put it that way. The computational power that it takes to run some of these advanced AI models is unbelievable. And we talk very much about, zero carbon emissions and things like that. The airlines are doing all that, and yet, we're just going to negate that with all of the superpower that some of these data sets have to have for AI. So anyway, that's kind of what it feels like. But here's the slide. This is how the security team really feels, okay? So there's one initiative. Let's do DevOps. Have you guys seen this? Okay, there's AI and cloud. Wait for it. There's digital transformation. That just encompasses everything. Wait for it. And there you go. Did you get it? Did you see the poop emoji bouncing in there? That's how the security team feels about it, honestly. But that was just to make you laugh. But at the end of the day, this is all I had to tell the board of directors, and that's exactly how I got the funding for AI. Just told them the name of the project. No, just kidding. Don't name your boat AI. That would be really weird. But anyway, okay. On to the next one. So this is where I think that from a cyber perspective and embracing AI with cyber in these 4 quadrants, I won't go through all of them, but I just illustrated it earlier here. AI is using it, look at this, for attackers as well as for defenders, which is what we are. Almost a 1-for-1 match right there, right? We are going to be taking a look more, as I mentioned earlier, about governance models and how to utilize AI in your organizations if your organization does decide that they want to. That is, by the way, a business decision. So all of us in the room here know that security is here. We serve the organization, right? And technology serves the organization. We are the underpinnings for how the organization wants to either improve their operating model, get their products and services to market faster, or improve customer service, right? Technology enables all of that, and AI will enable that too. And so as part of that, that is exactly where every organization can benefit from leveraging AI if done properly with the right guardrails. So all of that being said, let's talk a little bit about, oops, I did it too fast, what ChatGPT has now been labeled Fraud GPT, because there are all sorts of fraudulent activities that are happening with deepfake, with emails, because now attackers, cyber criminals, can create and social engineer an email that is very, very difficult to discern anymore from the naked eye whether or not it is actually authentic or not. Who was it this morning? I think it was the gentleman that was talking about the metaverse, and you did, with Office being of the service. Who was that? Yours? Okay, where it actually used a 0-point font in one of the emails, and it looked like the word Office to the naked eye, but it was something of the services or something like that, and that was a trick email to get people to click. So it's going to happen more and more often, of course, because they are leveraging this. Has anybody had experience with a deep fake yet? I have a personal experience. You have? Okay. I'm going to tell you about mine, and then I want you to share yours. So my father retired from IBM after 30 years, so he's still very tech savvy. And in fact, he used to even teach people how to use, their laptops and stuff like that up until a few years ago. But he got a phone call one day, and it was from my niece, his granddaughter, and she was crying and said she had gotten into a car accident. She was arrested because she was texting and driving, and she lives in Boston, and she needed $10,000 bail in order to get out, and she was crying. It sounded just like her. My stepmom came to the phone, heard the same thing. They asked him for his email address so they could send him a link. So he gave them a fake email address, or one of his garbage ones that, he uses for crap like this. And they kept sending him a different link every single time. He finally did the 2-factor human authentication and called me and said, "Hey, did so-and-so call you and say that she was in jail because she was texting and driving and, whatever?" And I'm like, no, she's in college. I doubt that she was out. This was like the middle of the day. And I said, but I'll call her 2 sisters, my other 2 nieces, find out. I called them. Nope, she's in class right now. So no, none of that. So that was you've got to still pick up the phone and maybe authenticate with each other that if something like that happens, that it is the real deal. But it sounded just like her because they had scraped voicemails And I don't know how they got the crying thing down, but he said it sounded just like her, and he was almost ready to hit that send button because he was so worried about her. All right, what was yours?
So for me, well, it's quite the opposite of Cindy's story. It's more trying to create a deep fake of myself. So when I'm asked to be on all of these webinars,
Oh my God!
I have a nice way to, I don't know, kind of sub myself in.
Okay, let me know how that works out. Let me know how that works out for you. Okay. All right, so how much time do I have?
6 minutes.
6 minutes. All right, good. We're there. All right. So the one thing I will say, and I'm gonna stay very optimistic on this still. This gentleman here with Harvard Business Review, he actually wrote a book called The Digital Mindset and how organizations embrace technology and AI. It's an excellent book. I highly recommend get the audiobook, or if you like to flip pages, go ahead and read it. But the one thing that he really talks about is that people that don't have a digital mindset, they're the ones that are going to be left behind. So in today's day and age, and with everybody that I've seen here at the conference, the students and everybody, you have to have a digital mindset in order to succeed in how the world is going to shape going forward. You really do. And he talks about how to embrace that. So the one thing that I do like, the CIO from Procter & Gamble that I spoke with not long ago says, he doesn't call it artificial intelligence. He actually calls it augmented intelligence or amplified intelligence, because he does not see it as replacing any of the skill sets on his team. And he said, as a matter of fact, what I look for are people that have a natural born curiosity and creativity, because it still takes the human mindset to hypothesize about a problem. And then we can go and leverage AI and other resources to research solutions to that problem. But those are some of the most effective use cases. And he said those human-centric skills, the critical thinking, and I know that there's articles that say at some point AI is going to be able to reach critical thinking capability. That I'm not so sure about. And I'm going to just hold it there. It's very possible, but I still don't know. The human brain is something that I think is one of the most powerful tools that we have, right? And many of us, are any of you artistically inclined? Like, do any of you play music or do things that are, that use that other side of your brain? No? Yeah, we've got a couple in here. Okay. So I think that there's that mashup between that ability to think creatively through a problem, think outside the box, whatever you want to call it. And maybe AI will be able to make those suggestions, maybe seem like it's critical thinking skills or creative, but I'm not sure it's actually going to still mimic what the synaptic fluid is going back and forth in here. Anyway, so that is what some of those skill sets are. Now, from a strategy standpoint, because I have to come back to my role as a CISO or CISO, many organizations ask, how do we even get started, right? And we have that risk management framework that I shared earlier that the US government has released. Of course, as I mentioned earlier, also the European Union has the AI Act that just now got launched. But this is what I created as a checklist. And honestly, you could take the word AI off of there and just put it as any new technology checklist. Because first and foremost, what you have to ask your organization is, what problem are we trying to solve with the use of this new technology? Did we not learn our lesson 10 years ago when cloud computing became the big thing? And organizations thought, great, let's just take everything in our own data center and shift it right on over into the cloud. It broke everything. Stuff didn't work the same in the cloud. It also created that shared responsibility model. Well, that shared responsibility is going to flourish here in artificial intelligence as well. There's a couple of other things here too, and that the one that I want to mention, and I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom of the list because we're getting close on time, is that supply chain, or is that third-party risk management. So if your cyber companies that you work with, or anybody that's involved in your supply chain is using artificial intelligence, your legal team, your privacy team, your security team, they all need to be involved in those decisions and evaluating the use of AI that those companies are using your company information to go about and do. Remember, that right to be forgotten is going to be super difficult with this AI age, and the way that they're using that data could end up, obviously backfiring on you in some way, shape, or form, intellectual property could be got into the wrong hands. And not just from a ransomware attack or a cyber attack, it could just be by natural use of AI. So I'm all about change. I think that most of us here in this room are in technology because we find it intellectually challenging and fun to go do. I love change. I think that technology and the changes that come about with it can be a little bit scary, and of course they can be risky. But it does make you vulnerable, right? That's the word that we talk all day long about in cybersecurity is vulnerabilities. And change makes you vulnerable. It makes your organization vulnerable. But not as risky as failing to take action, which is kind of what happened to Blockbuster back in the day. So I encourage you all to go back to your organizations. These slides, I think, will be available. So if anybody wants to use like the checklist and things like that, or get that reference material, they'll be available. But I do believe that, you know, we're poised to take that risk. We're smart people in this room and in this conference. And I really do believe in the power of cybersecurity and technologists to put us in a better place. So as for my personal relationship with AI, well, we're still figuring things out. But I don't have a replica or, you know, any of those sort of personal relationships with a chatbot yet being the operative term. But I do have golden retrievers. And aren't they cute? Okay. All right, that's it, folks.